Hello everyone, welcome back to another session of solving Leetcode problems. Today we're going to be solving problem 8, which is called string to integer, or atoi. Essentially what we're going to be doing is implementing the atoi function from C and C++, which takes in a string and converts it to a 32-bit signed integer. We're going to be doing it in Python, which makes it a little bit easier at one of the steps. But for the most part, this should be a fairly comprehensive solution. So yeah, let's get started. Essentially, I guess we can read through the problem statement. The algorithm for my atoi string is as follows. Read in and ignore any leading white space. Check if the next character is negative or positive sign if we're not already at the end of this string. Read this character in if it is either of those. And then obviously if it's positive, then we're going to return a positive number in the end. If it's negative, then we're going to need to return the negative number that we read in. Read in the next characters until the next non-digit character or the end of the input is reached. The rest of the string is ignored. Convert these digits into an integer. 123 would map to 123, and 0032 would map to 32. If no digits were read, then the integer is 0. Change the sign as necessary from step 2. And then if the integer is outside of our range, which is for 32-bit integers, negative 2 to the 31 and 2 to the 31 minus 1, then we're going to clamp the integer. So anything that's below that range, we're going to make the negative 2 to the 31 our very minimum of the range. And anything greater than 2 to the 31 minus 1, we're going to clamp to now the 2 to the 31 minus 1. And then we just return the integer as the final result. Before we look into this, okay, so it seems like everything will either be white space plus minus dot. This white space here is a space, and digits 0 to 9. So that's the first thing I wanted to check. So yeah, for examples, 42 would give you 42. A bunch of white space and then negative 42 will give you negative 42. And then 4193 with words will give you 4193. You essentially don't pay attention to anything that comes after the number. So for our solution, this problem has a pretty low acceptance rate on Leetcode. I don't think it's because it's inherently difficult. I think it's just kind of an annoying problem to implement. And essentially, we're just going to be implementing the steps that they have laid out for us step by step. So one thing we want to remember is we will need to know whether or not our result is negative or positive. So we're going to have a Boolean for that, where we start off with negative equals false, and later on we'll set it to true if we find that something is meant to be negative. And in Python, I'm not 100% positive if there's some constants for int min and int max, just because in Python, integers aren't bound by an int min or int max. There's infinite precision. So with Python, that is the one part that's easier, is we can go over that int max or under that int min and then just say, hey, if it's greater than this, then we'll just make it either int max or int min, whichever one, depending on the case. So let's quickly just define some constants. Int min is negative 2 to the 31, and int max equals 2 to the 31 minus 1. Now we can get started with implementing this. First thing we do is read in and ignore any leading white space. So I'm just going to reassign the string to get rid of the leading white space. This L strip means strip everything that is white space to the left of the non-white space characters. So if we had something like, 31, we would get rid of everything, and this is what our string would now be. And if we had white space after, we would keep this white space, just because based on the instructions that they've given us, it doesn't say to get rid of any trailing white space. So we're not going to do that. So now that we've done that, I think we're going to want to iterate over the rest of the characters in the way that they've described here. So we're going to, instead of modifying our string, we're going to have like an index that we step through our string with. And so the next thing they say is to check if the next character is a minus sign or a plus sign. So if I is less than len of s and si in minus plus, so that would tell us that the first character is a minus or a plus sign. Then we will, if si equals negative, then we are going to say negative equals true. And then in either case, whether it was a minus or a plus sign, we're going to increment this I by 1. Now, we will do the next step, which is read in the next characters until the next non-digit character or the end of the input is reached. If the end of the input is reached, then this condition will break. And the other condition is we go until the next non-digit character. Python has something where you can check to see if a string is numeric. So we're checking to see if this specific character that we're looking at is a numeric character. So while this is true, we should actually initialize our result. I forgot to do that at the beginning, but we're going to have a result that starts off as 0. Because if you remember, we say if no digits were read, then the integer is 0. So that's kind of our default case. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our current result so far by 10, and then we're going to add the current number that we're looking at, and then we're going to increment I by 1. So let's say we had 31. Then we started off with our res being 0. And then, so on the first iteration, we check, okay, is this numeric? Yes, it is. So we're going to multiply this by 10. Sorry, I'll just get rid of the string. So this is 0 by times 10, which is still 0, plus 3. This is our first character. Oh, sorry. I should wrap this in an integer. And then, so now this is 3, and then we go to the next character, I plus equals 1. Well, this 1 here is numeric, and we haven't reached the end of the string yet, so we're going to do res plus times equals 10, which gives us 30, and then we're going to add the integer value of this character, which is 1, so 30 plus 1 is 31, and then I plus equals 1. So we find, okay, well, I is no longer less than len of s, so we're going to break, and this is our result so far after this step. So the next thing that we want to do is change the sign as necessary. So if negative, then res times equals negative 1. It's as simple as that. And then the last thing we need to do is clamp the integer to be within our range, and then return the final result. What we can do for that is we can kind of do this all in one line. Well, if it is greater than our int max, then we're going to want to return int max. And if it's less than it, then we can return our result as is. So we're going to take the minimum of int max in res. But then we're also going to need to take the maximum of that and int min, just in case it was something that was below our int min bound. So let's just double check. Runs. Seems to pass the example test cases. We can submit to check. Perfect. It worked. So yeah, this problem wasn't too bad. It might just be because we were doing it in Python, where we don't have to worry about those bounds, where if something goes past int max, then it would probably be a bit more annoying to handle that in a different language. But since we are dealing with Python, this was a fairly easy problem to implement. If you're going to be implementing it in something like C or C++, that part might be a little bit more annoying. I haven't put too much thought into how to deal with that. Mostly because in interviews, I would always use Python just because I think it's the most versatile in terms of solving these types of problems Obviously, if you're doing competitive programming, C++ is a lot faster, and you could run into some time limit exceeded issues with Python, but for the most part, in interviews, this should do the job. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you had any questions about this solution, and I'll see you guys in the next problem.